You tell me when. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Intellectually Speaking. I'm Dr. Steve Petteruti, along with Shannon. Today, we're going to be talking about a range of topics, but I want to connect a few things. The CDC director resigning, the mayor of Baltimore taking a leave of absence. Did you hear about that one, Shan? Yeah, I'm going to connect that. And I'm going to connect that to intravenous vitamin C for fighting cancer. Now, how in the world do these separate things all connect? Well, you're going to find out. And in the course of connecting them, we're going to describe very briefly, I know how much everybody loves history, but we'll briefly describe the origins of intravenous vitamin C for fighting cancer, why we feel it is underutilized modality, and we're also going to talk about a concept called active surveillance, also known as watchful waiting. There are certain kinds of cancer that are felt to be so indolent, so benign, if you will, that they're not worthy of treatment. That is, that the treatment is worse than the disease. So how do all these things connect? Well, let's start out by talking about vitamin C for cancer. Now, it was Dr. Linus Pauling and Dr. Cameron back in the 1960s. They were theorizing that vitamin C may help treat and or prevent cancer. And that was based upon the doctor's observation that cancer was behaving kind of like scurvy. Now, scurvy is a disease that's caused by vitamin C deficiency. And in scurvy, the cells break down and the organs break down, and it sort of metastasizes, burning through tissue. And it's fixed by intravenous vitamin C. Now, back then, the theory was, hey, if we give people high-dose intravenous vitamin C, maybe it's going to reinforce their soft tissue, it's going to reinforce the fascia in a way that will make the cancer not able to penetrate. So there was this idea that maybe it was a physical barrier that would work. They took a cluster of patients and they gave them intravenous vitamin C. And based on their observations, they noted that these patients lived longer than expected. Now, they all had cancer. Many of them died due to their disease, but they lived longer and they lived better. That was their observation in the paper that they published. The paper, you can guess, was profoundly criticized. The mechanism of the study wasn't adequate. It wasn't double-blinded. The criticisms came from mainstream medicine. That's still where these criticisms come from. We'll talk about that too. So the Mayo Clinic decided that they would test the theory, and they did a double-blind placebo-controlled study, one group with vitamin C, the other group with a fake-me-out placebo. And their conclusion was no benefit. The Mayo Clinic concluded no benefit. That's the headline. But wait, there's more. The detail is that Linus Pauling and his colleagues were using vitamin C intravenously. Mayo Clinic did it orally. So for many years, in fact, unto this day, many unenlightened doctors with regard to vitamin C, not that they're globally unenlightened, they just haven't made it their business to study vitamin C and keep up with its literature. I'd say that trait is true of all of our critics. They are not up to speed with the state-of-the-art of vitamin C, and their reflexive bias is that it's no good, based upon the study from Mayo Clinic from some 30 or 40 years ago now. Well, move the needle forward, and people became more interested in vitamin C. In fact, many doctors that are practicing a style of intellectual medicine, which is what we do, they're practicing a functional medicine, they're practicing a naturopathic approach, continue to use vitamin C because they were aware that there's a difference between how it behaves given intravenously versus orally. When it's given orally, was Dr. Mark Levine, he's down at the NIH now, and he did some of the studies demonstrating the fact that you can only get so high with blood levels when it's given orally. After that point, the body controls the amount in the blood and lowers it. Intravenously, you bypass that limitation. So now you can get these super high doses. Aha, maybe that's the difference maker. And that has opened up a whole new era of research and interest in intravenous vitamin C. And that is, might this be an asset in the fight against cancer? Let's take a little segue. We'll come back to the vitamin C story in a moment. The problem with the fight against cancer is that it has been encroached, almost completely taken over by myopic self-interest. Oncologists are good people. The people researching cancer have a sincere pursuit, but it's been tainted. We can connect some of these dots. Duke University paid a $120 million fine because they were faking results of their studies. Why fake results? To get more money from the NIH to fund further studies. Do you see how perverted that gets? How we're starting to just do studies for the sake of doing studies instead of trying to cure cancer. We gotta get a copy of my book here, my fiction book, The Cancer Machine, which tells a fictionalized story of what's happening in the real world to a great degree. Myopic self-interest, folks, is when the institution or the individual that has an agenda is looking so narrowly at their outcome that they can't take the camera back and look at the big picture. This is true of Big Pharma. They're not intrinsically evil, they're just myopic. Look, if I am the man who invented Keytruda, and Keytruda has been shown to extend life several months in various forms of cancer, that's what I'm going to promote. Never mind the side effects, never mind the brief benefit, never mind the cost. We're going to focus on that. Who's focusing on vitamin C? It's cheap, it's generic, it's not delivered in oncology wards, it's delivered, well, by people like me. So let's think about the fight on cancer. There has been progress made, but take a look at the board behind me. I want to highlight the death rates from 1960 to 2011. You notice that the death rate from heart disease has plummeted from 559 deaths per 100,000 down to 173. Cancer has edged downward a little bit, but notice that's lower respiratory tract infection, think pneumonia, has increased. What does cancer treatment do? It destroys your body's immune system. In many cases, it leaves the patient withered, atrophied, weakened. Yes, you may live a bit longer, but at what price? Where's the quality? And I'm an osteopathic physician. I'm board certified in family medicine. I've practiced mainstream traditional medicine for 30 years. I'm aware of, and I practice the standard of care for every disease treatment out there. But the standard isn't good enough for patients fighting cancer in most cases. Innovation is desperately needed. And innovation, as you might imagine, if you innovate in cancer treatment, what happens? Well, they welcome that. They're happy that we're innovating. They're pleased that we're doing things that are novel. No, they're not. They're annoyed with us because look, think from anthropologic perspectives. A tribe in the woods meets another tribe in the woods. They usually don't shake hands and get along. They're going to fight. It's because new information, unless it is discovered by the recipient, new information is typically met with skepticism. Skepticism can be healthy. Reflexive bias is toxic. The innovation of cancer treatment needs to be encouraged. Vitamin C is part of that innovation. Look behind me. The death rates from cancer are not moving nearly the way they should. By the way, Shannon, you know the death rate from suicide from 1960 to 2011 hasn't changed. The death rate for homicide has not changed. Just as a sidebar, I wonder what all those gun laws have had an effect on. I'm just curious. Anyhow, back to cancer. The notion that vitamin C ought not to be used, we reject outright. There have been studies supporting that vitamin C can improve quality of life, energy, and vitality. We've seen this manifested in case studies. What's the difference between a case study and anecdotal evidence? A case study is when you scientifically reflect upon an individual's remarkable, superior, or somehow different outcome. When it's called anecdotal, it's being dismissed by critics. So our patient, we have several in our practice, many of them are outliving expectations, are living better than expected, and it's dismissed as being anecdotal. Well, you know what? If you have cancer right now, you don't have 50 years to wait for some answers, do you? Did you know there are over 100 different kinds of cancer? And within those 100 different kinds of cancer, there are multiple stages and multiple cell types. Now, if there are that many forms of cancer, and if it requires double-blind, placebo-controlled studies before we can do anything, we're decades away from helping people. So when do we move on this innovative information? Here's my criteria. Number one, it's got to be safe. Vitamin C meets that criteria. Multiple studies, phase 1 studies have demonstrated its safety. Furthermore, clinical experience, hundreds of thousands of cases. At Intellectual Medicine, we've done thousands of infusions, tens of thousands. We're still waiting for our first serious complication, knock on wood. Number two, does it have a plausible mechanism of action, preferably one that has been demonstrated in research? Well, I told you a moment ago that vitamin C at one point was thought to have a benefit with regard to the soft tissue inhibition of cancer penetration. It may have that attribute, but the latest thinking and the latest research supports the fact that vitamin C is pro-oxidative when given intravenously. So many oncologists perceive vitamin C as being an antioxidant, which, if given along with chemotherapy, could weaken the chemotherapy effect. Radiation therapy is pro-oxidative. It creates free radicals to attack the cancer. That's one of the reasons why it also can harm the body. Vitamin C given orally is an antioxidant. When it's given intravenously, it becomes pro-oxidative. It converts into hydrogen peroxide, which is toxic to cancer cells, but safe for your body. How beautiful is that? Toxic to cancer, safe for the body. And in overwhelming majority of cases can be given at the same time as chemo and radiation without any evidence of doing harm and with growing evidence of possible benefit. You know, there are 42 studies recently completed or in the pipeline. This information is on our, where's the information, Shan? Where can they find it?
On our website.
On our website. And how do they get to our website?
Just im-120.com.
im-120.com is where we will put the articles that I'm referring to today for your own perusal. 42 studies in the pipeline. That's a beautiful thing. We will be studying intravenous vitamin C for the next 50 years, as well we should. But right now you can use it to try to help in this fight. Now I have to put in this disclaimer. Vitamin C is not FDA approved to treat cancer, and it's not known to be a cure for cancer. But imagine you're the patient with stage 4 cancer and they've run out of ideas. And what are they going to do? Well, sometimes they'll offer you chemotherapy just because it's what they've got. It's called palliative chemotherapy. It's been shown to cause harm and not have benefit. So why bother? But if you're otherwise feeling pretty good in the moment, and we see this often, patients feeling pretty good in the moment, stage 4 cancer, what can be done? We advocate for the role of this type of care because it supports your own body's fight. As an osteopathic physician, I was trained and I have a philosophical belief in the body's power to heal itself. And what we want to do is support that body and help it heal itself. And if you have to go through chemo, we want to then build you back up. Too often, the oncology approach to treatment leaves the body wasted, and there's not enough attention placed on recovery of the body itself. Vitamin C has some of that value. I need to talk a little bit about active surveillance. So we have some patients that are in active chemotherapy. They have lung cancer, which is very aggressive. They've got pancreatic cancer, which is an aggressive player. They have some childhood forms of cancer. That's very aggressive. By the way, a special notation for childhood cancers. At Intellectual Medicine, we treat them for free. With partnership with our charity, Haven's Healing's Hands, we are able to get vitamin C to them at no charge to the kid or the family. It's a beautiful thing. And few individuals need it more than kids because of the long lifespan they have and the risk of delayed relapse. So delayed relapse, and then we'll talk about active surveillance. You notice the death rate from cancer, right? Disappointingly stagnant. Yet the 5-year death rate has improved. What's happening is after 5 years, most sort of registries stop watching. So you get to 5 years, you're considered cancer-free. It's a good thing. The problem is if you go out far enough, the delayed relapse starts to occur. For breast cancer, it's up to 50%, depending on the stage. For colon cancer, we've seen 7, 8, 9% delayed relapse. In some cases, you're never really out of the woods, but you can't keep your chemotherapy going. Likewise, active surveillance means that there's now a movement in medicine. It's a minority movement, but it's gaining steam. As you might expect, it has more proponents in Europe than in the United States. Remember the concept of myopic self-interest. And remember the director of the CDC and the mayor of Baltimore and how they tie into this. And we'll get to that before we're done with this segment. Turns out that prostate cancer is probably better off not being treated ever, except for if it becomes metastatic. Well, what do I mean? A study done in 2012 called the Pivot Study, it's in our references. 2 groups of people, both had prostate cancer. One group had the gland removed, the other group did nothing. 12 years later, the death rate in both groups was the same. It was the same for all causes of death and the same for prostate cancer death. How could that be? If they took the prostate gland out, you'd expect those people to have less of a death rate from prostate cancer. And yet they had the same death rate from prostate cancer as people who had no treatment. How can that happen? Well, for one, prostate cancer is kind of indolent in many cases, meaning it sits there in the gland and never bothers anybody. So the idea is, hey, maybe we shouldn't treat this at all. We should simply monitor people. All right, that's probably better than getting your gland ripped out because all the complications of that, impotence, leaking urine, blood clots, infections, death from surgery, this stuff happens. So now we have a treatment that's guaranteed to do some harm with no known benefit, and that's removing glands. But tomorrow, some poor guy is getting his prostate removed, right? Why? Myopic self-interest. Imagine I am JoJo, the urology prostate removal specialist. It's what I do. And I've got this new machine called a Da Vinci, I think they call it, Shannon. It's a robotic surgical tool. And my institution paid $30 million for the Da Vinci. I don't know if that's what it costs, but they pay a lot of money for it. And now you're telling me that the surgery harms people and does no good? I'm going to choose not to believe that, and I'm going to continue to operate on people. It is reasonable to take out prostate glands so long as you're alerting the patient that it probably isn't going to help them and it will hurt them. That is the role of active surveillance, meaning let's do nothing. I don't think doing nothing really settles well with people. If you told me, Dr. Petteruti, you've got prostate cancer, but yeah, let's see if it metastasizes to your bones before we do anything. That's called a worry factor, and it affects the psychological health of people. We know there are things that contribute to cancer. We know that toxic heavy metals contributes to cancer. Well, we can remove those from the body or at least diminish them. Chelation therapy does that task. We know that fat cells stimulate or increase the risk of cancer. We know that at Intellectual Medicine, there's an approach to controlling and losing weight that is profoundly successful, 95% success rate. Lowering fat may help. Vitamin C has been shown to be toxic to 5 of 6 different prostate cancer cell lines in vitro. So they did a study looking at vitamin C cancer cells in vitro. 5 out of 6 were killed with vitamin C. How about if we put it in humans? Here's the problem. One of the reasons why the people may be dying from prostate cancer, even though they had the gland removed, is something called cancer cell dispersal. Now, only recently have we been able to do blood biopsies. Blood biopsies when we test your blood and we see if there are circulating tumor cells in it. And because this is recent information, it's not yet codified in a formal study. But I was talking to the medical directors at one of the liquid biopsy companies, and they said they've noted that after the cancer is removed, for instance, the prostate's removed, there's a surge of cancer cells in the blood. And it takes it months to settle down. What does that tell you? You go in there with a knife to cut out cancer, which is a microscopic cellular disease. Is it a shock to anybody that you're spreading cancer cells all over the place? And now we have some evidence. Now, whether or not the surgery actually can amplify the cancer risk of metastases, unknown. How about the biopsies? Sticking needles into a cancer cell, into a tumor. Might that also spread cancer? Yeah.
Someone wants to know, what about avoiding surgery and just doing radiation?
What about avoiding surgery for prostate cancer and just doing radiation? I'm glad you asked. Radiation therapy, no benefit. Horrible adverse effects. So now you're looking at delayed consequences, something called brachytherapy. Remember the seeds, Shannon, they used to put in prostate glands? Yeah, not so good. External beam radiation, you cannot target the gland without damaging other organs. So now you're damaging the rectum. I have a patient now, he's 10 years status post-radiation therapy for his prostate cancer, and he is incontinent of stool and bleeds from the rectum. And there's nothing they can do because the radiation therapy fried his rectum. Now here's a question. What's the survival rate, the 5-year survival rate for prostate cancer? The answer is 100% practically. So imagine you're the poor son of a gun that had your gland removed, and you're 5 years later and you're still alive. You're going to say, woohoo, good thing I had my gland out. Yeah, maybe not. We have a gentleman in our practice, right, Chen? He's had prostate cancer for 30 years. His PSA is over 50. He feels great. He never did anything. So I'm not advocating to do nothing. Here's, intellectually speaking, what I'm recommending to you. It's not FDA proven to do anything to cure cancer, but it's known not to cause harm, and it has a plausible mechanism of action. We advocate for regular intravenous vitamin C, along with subcutaneous mistletoe therapy. Vitamin C is shown to be toxic toward cancer cells in studies. More importantly, we know it's safe. Is it going to help prevent the prostate cancer from extending beyond the gland? That's not known. Those studies have not been done. Those studies are unlikely to be done in our lifetime. It doesn't mean, however, that we need do nothing. We know that low-dose naltrexone has been shown to have attributes that can help fight cancer. CBD oil has value. We know that ultrasound, far infrared ultrasound may have value. Lowering percent body fat may have value. So we bring these things to bear because they're logical, they're intellectual, they're safe. You're not going to go incontinent, you're not going to lose control of your urine, but you don't have to sit there passively doing nothing. Mistletoe therapy, we like to combine it with vitamin C. Why not? It's inexpensive, it's safe, it can be self-administered. The frequency that we advocate for in our prostate cancer patients is once per month. If your cancer is indolent, here's the theory. By the way, this theory and my expression and my speaking of it has instigated some in the Orthodox medical community to oppose our thought process and to try to constrain our speech regarding this matter. In fact, we are in the midst of fighting a battle right now. As I speak, the Department of Health in the state of Rhode Island wants to shut us down. They want to close intellectual medicine. They want to restrict access to intravenous vitamin C simply because of the theory I'm about to espouse. The possibility exists that intravenous vitamin C, when used in the manner that I'm proposing, could affect cancer cells that are trying to form in a manner that would suppress their proliferation and could possibly diminish the risk of cancer extending in the future. Now, the buzzword here is possible. We don't have proof that this actually works. So you're risking your time and your money, because you could do intravenous vitamin C once a month for the next 10 years and still die from prostate cancer. The mechanism of action is intriguing. The safety is extraordinary. The expense is minimal. The need to innovate is real. And we have to make these decisions right now, because we don't have 20 years to think about it. You could choose to do nothing. You could choose to have your prostate gland out. They're not wrong. They are just choices that you end up living with a consequence from. Radiation therapy, the HIFU therapy, the high heat therapy for prostate cancer, none of them have been proven to be effective in preventing death from cancer. None of them. Now, it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, and it doesn't mean a future study may not validate it beyond refute. What I'm advocating for is innovation, folks. The freedom to speak about innovative ideas, your freedom to pursue them if you like. And you know what? Your freedom gets choked if somebody isn't there to deliver these type of complementary and alternative approaches. Mistletoe therapy is being advocated by an organization called Believe Big. I encourage you to Google that, the word believe followed by the word big. And there's civilians that are advocating for their right, their freedom to pursue pathways of care that are innovative and are not part of mainstream medicine. This is the beauty of the internet. You can research everything I'm talking about. You can look at the articles that I recommend, or you can research your own. Intellectual medicine embraces that partnership. And we're asking for your partnership. Can we do that, Shan?
We can, actually. Nancy wants to know, why does the health department want to close you down?
Well, they want to close us down, Nancy, because they feel like we are misleading a vulnerable public. They feel that the people, you people, will be misguided by us speaking misinformation. We advocate for the science, and we advocate for innovation, especially in spaces where there's no true cure for a disease entity. I want to emphasize that the folks that oppose us are not our patients. None. Zero. We've been out here for how many years, Shan? 5 years? How many 5-star ratings do we have? 87 and counting. Our patients respect and embrace what we do for them, and they benefit. Nance, it's really some of these doctors are good people and good doctors. They are just entrenched in their own myopic self-interest. It's not surprising that the doctors I'm speaking of, and we'll have an opportunity to discuss it over time, they have some things in common. They're all bureaucratically oriented. They represent special interests like insurance companies and hospitals. Do you think they're crazy about what we're advocating? We just told you that we don't want anybody to get their prostate gland out. How happy do you think the prostate gland removal companies are right now? Good time to bring in, we'll talk about thyroid cancer in a moment and about a form of breast cancer as well. But I want to bring in the other two pieces. So Brenda Fitzgerald, director of the CDC, had to resign her position. It turns out she was investing in stocks, in tobacco companies, in Merck, in pharmaceutical companies, in CVS. How is this not eminently clear that if you're going to be a neutral arbiter, you shouldn't be taking money that is having your financial future staked to the health of these special interests? You want to buy stock in CVS, have a ball, but don't tell me it's not going to affect your thought process, especially when you have that kind of power. At Intellectual Medicine, intellectually speaking, we accept no sponsors. We take no money. We don't take anything from anybody regarding what we represent or advocate. You can't take a free lunch, people. There's no such thing. It's called the law of reciprocity. It's part of human nature. Somebody gives you something, they expect something. So let's take a look at the Baltimore mayor. I love this one. Baltimore Mayor Catherine Pugh. She wrote a book called Healthy Holly, and she self-published it. I'm very aware of this process. I self-published a book called The Cancer Machine. I strongly recommend you read it. I strongly recommend you buy it because I've not been able to create a book deal worth $500,000 like the mayor of Baltimore did. She sold $500,000 of Healthy Holly children's books. Really? Who's buying this book? By the way, Cancer Machine is way better than Healthy Holly, and it's fiction mimicking real life. If you want to know the psychology behind why people oppose us, not people don't oppose us. Some in the myopic mainstream of medicine oppose us. Our goal, our objective, and our hope is we can educate them through conversation, that we can engage them. It's not going very well, I have to say. So far, they have just talked to each other, and as soon as we can, we're going to be sharing these details with you. It is great drama. I just wish we weren't at the fulcrum of it, but so be it. By the way, we are seeking your partnership. We are seeking you to be our sponsor. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But you know who she sold the book to, Shannon? University of Maryland Medical System bought $500,000 of her book. Wow. Do you think they thought it was the next Pulitzer Prize that they're going to get ahead of the curve on? Or maybe, just maybe, you shed $500,000 on the self-published Healthy Holly children's book so you can distribute it through your hospital. Hey, maybe it's going to go well for you the next time a regulatory moment comes up in the city of Baltimore. It makes me a little sick to my stomach. And this is why you need things like the New York Times, like Politico that uncovers these stories, why you need a free press. This is why you need Intellectually Speaking, so that independent minds can weigh in on the myopic self-interest. The multi-billion, trillion-dollar industry that is our healthcare system has the power to run you over without giving you options and alternatives. At the same time, they're really filling their coffers. They're not evil. I want to emphasize that. They're just myopic. Look, again, if you spent $1 billion to develop a new cancer drug, you're not too crazy if vitamin C is proven superior. It hasn't been yet. Could be. Another active surveillance thing, Shannon, is thyroid. In trials, they're studying the possibility that treating thyroid cancer may do more harm than good. It's an indolent, slow-moving cancer. It's making news because it's become so much more prevalent. If I'm a doctor that can put a needle in your thyroid nodule and tell you whether or not there's cancer, it's compelling for me to do that. It's compelling for you to have it done. Even though the process of doing it, I may start you down a path. This article from the New England Journal of Medicine through 2017, I strongly recommend you all read it, especially if you have breast, prostate, or thyroid cancer, but it speaks to the medical system at large. And I'm going to quote the article. Sometimes this testing, I quote, creates a cascade of testing and treatment that isn't associated with longer survival, but can cause harm. Think of the prostate cancer, the radiation, the surgery. In my opinion, anybody with prostate cancer ought not to have it treated until and if it becomes metastatic. You should, in my opinion, be doing things to diminish the environment in which that cancer will be stimulated to grow. Lower percent body fat, live clean, live healthy, chelate, IV chelation, get out carcinogenic heavy metals. And yes, I advocate for intermittent use of high-dose vitamin C. Thyroid cancer, the same option presents itself. These always need to be looked at individually. And really, you need a strong and independent-minded clinician, somebody that embraces the philosophy and spirit of intellectual medicine, because many doctors, including many family doctors, just want to stay out of harm's way. And if an oncologist says, we need to take out your thyroid gland, or you need chemotherapy, or you need your prostate treated, or you should go on hormone blocking therapy for your if they're saying that to you, they're saying it because it's what they believe, it's what their experience has taught them, but it may not be what's best for you. And you need that independent balance to reflect upon it. And ideally, these two halves communicate. And at the end of this process, philosophy drives the train. It is, we can mention Donatelli, because she's got her Facebook page. Chris Donatelli is a patient who advocates for this type of independent thinking. Innovative approaches, you choose between quality of life, percentages of change. So for instance, perhaps a treatment would lower your percentage of relapsing in your cancer by 4 percentage points, but comes at a high price in quality of life. And you may not want to strike that bargain. This is intellectually balancing cause and effect. It's a little different for everybody. I intend to die with my prostate gland intact. Many people are not even advocating surveillance screening for prostate cancer. The blood biopsies we'll be talking about in a future section are fascinating, are new, and are largely being ignored by mainstream medicine, and we'll talk about that as well, at least many types of blood biopsies. So in summary, folks, on this topic, and then, Shen, I got to talk about the Final Four, basketball. I'll give you that quick prelude. I don't care who wins because basketball, college basketball is perverted. And the Final Four is a joke. And really, they're college students. Are you kidding me? Zion Williamson, have you completed a term paper? He's a kid from Duke who's like one and done, as they say. These kids, anyhow, let me finish my other thought, then we'll come back. Active surveillance, watchful waiting, do no harm. Study your cancer type. The research is out there. You can reflect on this. If your cancer has been completed, your therapy is now over, it's not really over. The delayed relapse is a frightening and real phenomenon. There are so many things you can do, vitamin C is just one of them, to make your internal environment less hospitable to cancer. This goes beyond the scope of what I learned in medical school and what most doctors are taught, and therefore it goes against what most of them believe. A good naturopath or an osteopath or an intellectually oriented physician can help guide you through this pathway. So, worry factors, take a look at these, look at our website. Bear in mind the myopic self-interest. The source of your information needs to be scrutinized. So how do you join us? Well, we are, as we mentioned, in a fight for our lives, for the freedom to continue practicing medicine and the freedom to continue to communicate it to you. Now, at our website, there's a button that you can hit where you can help sponsor us. And you are the only ones we want as our sponsors. We're asking for and inviting you to become part of our world in a very active way. You know, when I was a kid, I had a tendency to kind of mix it up. I guess things don't change much. I saw something that wasn't right, and I advocated for a point of change. And my mother always said, Steve, watch out for the coat holders. They're the people that say, go get them. You get in that fight. I'm going to stand here and hold your coat while you get bloodied. We don't mind this fight. It's our fate. We embrace the opportunity to advocate for what we believe on behalf of our patients. We promise to always be a source of trustworthy information because we are not going to be influenced by dollars that are out there to be had. Sorry, Shannon, we're just not. It's just the money that we get is the money we earn from taking care of our patients. So we're looking forward to your support as much, really, psychologically, spiritually, and socially. For every person that donates money to our fight, it's going to go 100% of that is going to go to the legal expenses that we have that mount every month and to the cost of delivering our message to you. That's it. So folks, with that, we'll turn to the Final Four. So really, do we care? The colleges are trying to pretend like these are student athletes when it is a big show. Everybody's getting paid millions. The networks get billions and the students. So here's my proposal. The NCAA should disqualify teams from competing in the NCAA tournament if their athletes are not graduating at the same rate as a general population of students. I want to know how many kids at Duke, how many kids at Texas Tech, how many basketball players are going to graduate in 4 years. Most of them aren't still in school. And if they did that, they'd really be backing up the student-athlete concept. So will I be watching the Final Four? I don't care. I like my professional sports honest. If I'm going to watch people getting paid to play, I'm going to watch the pros, not this charade. Anyhow, that's all for now, folks. Thanks for watching. Tune in Saturday morning on WPRO 99.7 FM for Intellectual Medicine, where we'll pick up these threads of conversation. Shannon, if they're outside of the broadcast area, how do they watch it? Facebook, right? So you go to Facebook, we simul-broadcast Facebook and the radio station concurrently. Thanks for watching us, folks. We'll see you next Wednesday, 12 o'clock right here. I'm Dr. Steve Petteruti. This is Intellectually Speaking.